With Super Slam coming out, Kayo got a lot of support, and I wanted to put out a deck tech. This was something that I was considering playing for my ProQuest season. This is something that I would have brought to a tournament. I decided to go with Earth, at least for week 1. Made top 4 and then top 8 with Florian. Well, that was my week 1, and I decided to pivot off of this deck. This was something that I was heavily testing and really considering bringing to the ProQuest season. I would say that this list probably leans more towards mid-range. There are more value numbered crunches rather than explosive power turns. So we're not going to be playing, cards like Gold Kiss Rum, Pulping, Extra Wild Rides. I think this list is mainly playing it more safe, but that's definitely more catered to my play style. I usually like decks that are more, value focused and consistent rather than a little bit more RNG heavy and explosive. So the biggest thing that you got with KO was just more good blue 5s, which of course with KO's ability turn into 6s. This is the hero for anyone who joined way after heavy hitters, probably after MST. By the time MST was out, KO was entirely irrelevant. All of the brute cards that care about discarding 6s can now discard 5s. The biggest win in terms of KO's performance from Super Slam is now getting a lot of very good 5 blues that are all very strong. So we look at cards like Buckwild. This is just a blue 5 with Go Again. And it doesn't require any RNG discards off the top like Wild Ride. It can even block if you really need to. I think this is just like fantastic upgrades to the deck. And a lot of our blue base kind of got overhauled. We now have Strongest Survive, which is just very good on hit disruption. It's a little bit expensive at 3, and while the red version is very good, the blue version is also very good to specific aggro focused decks that will always require 1 card. So a blue that requires a block from your opponent is just really good. And you even consider something like Smashing Ground, which is not really something you want to cast all the time. I do understand that obviously if you were to play Send Packing, it's just better value. But if you were to draw like 2 blues off of a Blood Rush, and this is one of them, you still have Disruption, which I think is really important. It just fixes a lot of the issues where you kind of break on blues and you can't do anything. And the biggest difference now is now you still can do stuff with your blues. Even getting a complete power creep in terms of the triangle that they made in heavy hitters, where certain classes would get 2 clash tokens, but not the 3rd one. And the one that Brute didn't get is they could make agilities and they can make mights in heavy hitters, but they couldn't make vigors. But LSS decided to power creep that, and it wasn't unilateral. So Guardians are not making agility tokens, but now Brute can make all 3 types of tokens. So you get a very, very good blue here, and still coming in at 5 power means that it still gets to fit in your base. And then another kind of niche blue here is just Unexpected Backhand. It really could just be blank text, and you maybe could still play something like Assault and Battery as a turn 1 setup with agility. I think that's totally fine. I just wanted to include this just to have some kind of reckless stampede RNG that really just helps you kind of spike a game. More new cards that we're going to play, of course, Red Buckwild, the red Strongest Survive, but Show Strength is really good into aggro decks and more non-attack focused decks. You just got 3 extra copies of Swing Big, but with no downside basically into those specific matchups. So you'll side those out into like, things like Guardian, for example, sometimes just because it's kind of no point in having this. But into decks that aren't going to be blocking with more than maybe like 1 card that meets that condition, you just have more copies of Swing Big, which is amazing. And you're going to play Song of Sinew, in my opinion, in a list like this. I kind of view this as a mid-range focused deck where you're going to be doing something like sending a 2-card 8, 2-card 9, trying to discard a card to get that +1 off of KO. You can flex some 4-card hands, that go like play Buckwild, play Swing Big, right? That's like it's a 4-card 15. You can play like Buckwild, Bear Fangs. If you have an agility, you can play, Show Strength, tap for the arms, play another 2 cost. Like you kind of get where this is going. Song of Sinew is just a really efficient card in that regard, and it lets you kind of race the aggro decks because you're able to get this pretty consistent 0 for 4 yellow, which is already above rate. It can still block and it can pitch on your curve. Like you play a lot of 2 costs if you're in a spot where you just had to block with 2 cards, pitch Song and play Bear Fangs or CNC, Swing Big, whatever. This meets all the criteria. So I view it as a very good glue piece. Cast Bones was always kind of a liability because it's a very slow card. It builds tempo for you, but it kind of gives you this weird off turn where if your opponent can punish you correctly, and if it's in the wrong spot, it doesn't do anything because you don't have 2 turns to get the payoff. You need the payoff immediately. What I like about Song is that Song is just always live to do something in terms of the game progression. When you draw it, you can just play it immediately. The fact that this buffs any attack means that it covers all of your disruption. So you can put it on CNC, strongest survive, send packing, etc. But it also has a baseline of even just going on the claw. So if you completely break and all you're going to do is do a 2-card 7, play song, and then swing claw, like it sucks, obviously. But that's the floor. And I feel like that's good enough, right? So I think this card's very good. And I've been a pretty big believer in it so far. I just feel like in a lot of matches where you would have to cut cast bones, just because it's just not fast enough. I think that this card does everything that you want it to do, which is just, ramp up that damage scaling for a turn. I think it's very good. Of course, obviously, the other benefit is getting to sculpt. What the 4 cards are, this is incredibly relevant if you combine this with Blood Rush. So I love having 1 copy when in Arsenal into matchups where you have the luxury to wait a little bit. So obviously, and if you're playing against Syndra, you just have to fire this when you draw it. But into decks where you can kind of sculpt it, if you get to pair this with the Blood Rush and then you get to actually perfectly sculpt what your Blood Rush draw is, it's so powerful because you can actually completely plan out your curve for the Blood Rush. You can plan what cards you're going to draw, and then you can also plan what you're going to discard. So I've had hands, right, where I play it in combination with the Blood Rush and then I manipulate the top of the deck. So I draw a perfect curve, and then let's say like I have a draw discard. And then I'm able to fix the top of the deck and put beasts within or whatever on top. Or when I was trying out sea legs, I was able to do with sea legs. I think it glues a lot of the deck together very nicely. If you're not a big fan of it, obviously you don't have to run it. It was just the argument I want to make for the card. Everything else is pretty stock standard for KO. You just have more go again sources. You want to pair this with your Blood Rush, right? And then of course your Sash gives you some really powerful turns. I'm running Gauntlets just because the new cost curve works really well with the blues. You're able to play something like Buck Wild, activate the Gauntlets, and then send a 2 cost. This is really good if you have something like CNC, right? Even like Swing Big and Show Strength, just getting those, like that extra +1, it just converts a lot more often. So I'm noticing that I'm getting more damage per game out of the Gauntlets than I would with Apex, even though that this costs a resource and Apex was always free. Our sideboard, we have Cast Bones and Reckless Stampede. These are really good into the slower decks. So the thing about things like Earth, even on the Earth side, I have felt like it's really, really difficult to beat KO when they're able to line up, Cast Bones and Stampede together, just because Stampede ends up pseudo being like, 14, like unblockable or whatever, just because like you can block it and you normally need to if they push it that high, but you're always leaking that damage off of the effect, not to mention whatever else they play for the turn. So it just helps you sculpt like really powerful hands that just like are going to get over any slow deck, especially any deck that's trying to fatigue you. I have liked No Fear into disruptive matchups. So if they ever try to push disruption into you, you can just play the No Fear, save your whole hand. This will get around things, like Felling, anything into Marionette or Slippy. I mean, obviously it's less relevant now that Bonds got hit, but you get the idea. It just kind of saves your hand while also saving you the life, which I think is probably like the good part of the card, is that, obviously you could find a defensive card. And then I am trying out the 1 copy of Reckless Swing just for certain matches, but I haven't quite figured out the heuristic of how I want the card to play. The current thought process is I just wanted matchups where the life totals are very close and the game races very quickly. And so I just need to close out that extra 2. But I'm still kind of thinking more and more about this card if I still want it. We'll come back to this, in a future video probably. And then I'm playing Humble mainly for Gravy. I just need a way to race that deck because it can race you very well and you have trouble efficiently clearing their board. Even though theoretically, Claw can kill anything and you send a lot of damage, Gravy is a very good mid-range deck and they're able to chum, your Blood Rush turn. And even though maybe efficiently you can kill chum, it still saved them 6 life, right? Which is pretty relevant. I've been trying Humble into Gravy just to be able to race them a little bit more efficiently. And it has been working with some effect, but I do think that Gravy is still a very tough matchup for the deck. You can obviously play Humble into a couple different heroes. It's very good into Earth, for example. Overall, it's been, kind of an interesting card to try. I think if you're worried about something like Asalio, for example, or you wanted more tech for the mirror, you could play Weakest Link, but I do really like Humble into the mirror. It's probably one of the best tech cards you could play. And then we just have AB1, but you can go up to AB3 with Skullhorn if you want to play it into, like Verdance or Kano. And then we have Balance. This can be for Syndra if you want it to, but I like Fleshbag a bit more into Syndra, but it's mainly just here for Gravy. So that's the overall deck. We can get a gameplay example, so we'll jump into a game. That way you can see how I would pilot this. All right, we're playing into the new Underhanded Cheat KO, which I have like next to no experience playing into. So I will for sure punt something this game, and I may or may not lose the whole match, but we'll go ahead and see. In theory, it seems pretty good as the OG KO. I mean, like your on hits like survive like are pretty likely to connect, but I guess we'll see. At least in theory, from the list I've seen, you know, like I've seen Man Sans list, for example. I can play Swing Big. It's pretty bad. We can consider keeping the Buck Wild. I feel like we kind of don't need to. We probably should just take the life. On the weird off chance we draw into Blood Rush, we might as well cash in the Savage Sash block now. It seems kind of unlikely, but my opponent goes off an Arsenal. We're going to go ahead and send the Wild Ride. This is a pretty good hand. If we hit one or the other, we can still play the other half. So pretty decent hand to draw into. Like for instance, now we just get a perfect curve out because we're just going to go Claw into Bear Fang. So we have a clean 4-cost curve. But for example, if this was like a 3-cost or something, now with the new gauntlets, we could just close the chain and just get an extra +1 on the turn. So the gauntlets, I think, do kind of smooth out a lot of the hands. So I have been a big fan of them so far. I really do think that this matchup is going to involve us trading numbers back and forth. If I had to guess, I feel like we're probably advantaged just due to the fact that we just get this passive +1 whenever we discard. And then we also have the ability to just get that like crazy pop-off turn with the Blood Rush. We'll go ahead and see. You know, obviously, these lists are still getting refined. And we'll go ahead and we'll end with our Bear Fangs. Hope to hit 6. We do. Very good hand, right? I mean, this was what? 4 cards. We went a 6, 3, and 8. So this is actually a 4-card 17. If you consider the might that we're making on the back end, it's even higher. This next hand is pretty not great. We can roll Scabs. If we do roll Scabs, we get an extra 8 damage this turn. Or I guess it would more likely be 3. Question is, do we want to potentially lose the game by rolling a 1 and then passing with this hand when we have Disruption to get 3 extra damage with the Claw? I feel like the answer is probably no, so we're just going to overpitch like this. I mean, of course it feels really bad. The way that I kind of like to play this deck is, you know, I think that playing to your outs of winning is mainly going to involve not doing lines like this where we would just randomly lose. We have tempo. Our opponent's on the back foot until further notice. I don't think that we need to ruin our chances of winning by rolling Scabs here, especially when the outcome, like the high end of this is just 3 extra damage. Like, we're already ahead. If we were way down and like the only way that it looked like we were going to win is if we rolled and hit something crazy, I would understand. Our turn is not very good. I could see us rolling Scabs in this position because we just have the blues. We could have considered blocking 6 as well. I think that also could have been very valid. But now that we're stuck with this hand, I think we are going to roll Scabs. So I'm going to go against everything I just said. We end up hitting the 4, so we get a little bit lucky for no reason. We're going to go ahead and start by sending the Swing Big. We're going to send the Swing Big, we're going to pop the Gauntlets, and then we're going to go ahead and send the Strongest Survive. This just converts the hand the best. I think that we maybe could have considered blocking for 6 though, and just sending the Strongest Survive, and then not having to play into the variance of having to roll Scabs. So mainly had to do with us misblocking on the previous turn. I think we should just put down 6, like block with the Wrecker Romp, and the Strongest Survive, and just pitch our Run Rough Shot and play our Strongest. I'm definitely interested to see if my opponent wants to cash in a Quicken token here. I definitely think that getting a Quicken token for KO is pretty good. I mean, they're able to like bluff the combat trick, right? If they hold up a card with the Vigor token and then they send something, I could see it being kind of good. Really depends on what happens after. Okay, so they're kind of not really using the equipment to stop on hits. I feel like they probably could hold on to it a little bit longer, but I don't really exactly know how this deck plays. Now we're coming in for 6 though. And it looks like most things in this deck, it's kind of live to hit. So we end up getting a 2-card block from them. And it looks like it's another Mocking Blow. They just barely get to stay out of the range. They, of course, have the 1 floating. So this is going to go up to, it should be 8. I mean, this is pretty good. I mean, these are 2-card 8 plays with blues, but our hand is very good. So we're just going to go ahead and take it because our hand sends 14, including the Disruption. So we'll go ahead and we'll play our Buck Wild into our Strongest Survive. They can flashbag this, so we do need to always kind of remember that. The same goes on my opponent's end. We probably need to think about when we want to flashbag our opponent. This probably seems kind of relevant on both halves of the table. But again, to send this would be very good. If they do flashbag us, we have the potential to get blown out. Looks like that didn't happen. But we probably need to remember that and probably play accordingly. But I'm assuming that from my opponent's standpoint, they probably just want to hold Fleshbag until we draw Blood Rush, which makes a lot of sense. And then they're just going to send Nimby. We'll see if they go get the blue one or not. They did go and get the blue Nimby, so it's going to go up to 6. It's actually pretty decent for us because our hand is actually very bad. So we can actually go ahead and block for 6 like this. And then our turn is probably, depending on, I think we're going to see what we clash and hit with. This goes up to 7. We show the Smashing Ground, and they actually show a Strongest Survive. So they actually get the Vigor token. Very bad for us. We're going to go ahead and I guess we'll go ahead and sink it. Now, the question is if we want to just pass here or not. We know they have the Strongest Survive. Doesn't really convert with their hand very well, so I could see us just discarding this, making our Might and our Agility, and then just passing. And then we'll see if they can convert all the cards in their hand. They may end up feeling priced to rolling Scabs, especially knowing that they're holding a red. If that is the case, then we could end up getting very lucky, especially if they hit a 1. This hand is actually really bad for us. I mean, well, there's an asterisk here. It's very good. It's very bad that my opponent is holding Strongest Survive right now, though. We can block for 4 and just show the Wrecker Romp, so we should be okay in theory. We need to keep this entire hand. The cool part here is that Sinew means that we get to fix our entire Blood Rush draw like we talked about. We also have the Agility token as well. While we're not playing something like Savage Feast anymore, obviously we still can abuse the Quicken token if we fix our draw with Sinew and draw like some 2-cost non-go against. So we know they haven't activated Kayo this turn. There's a 50-50 chance that we hit the blue, knowing that one of the cards in their hand is red. The only problem though is that Kayo is an instant speed ability, so this doesn't really matter. So with that being the case, I think we're just going to block with our boots here and then just let them get the ability off. We're going to take a ton of damage though, which is definitely not great for us. 20 life, and we know that their arsenal is a disruptive card. We're just going to have to really hope here that our Blood Rush is strong enough to get there. This is actually very good. We will go ahead and I guess we'll stack it like this. We're going to go ahead and put the Blood Rush and then the blue Agile Wind up on top. We'll go ahead and play our Blood Rush. We're going to draw another one. We're going to go ahead and do this again. All right. And so now we have a lot of cards to work with, but is it really enough to win the game? That I don't know. We can pop Sash here. If we pop Sash here, we get to open with Swing Big, and then we can play our Buckwild. The problem though is that if we pop Sash, our opponent can actually blow us out by using Flesh Bag, so it's actually kind of awkward. The only thing we can do though is that this costs 0, this costs 2, and this costs 2. So it doesn't really help us regardless. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to, unfortunately, just send this into the claw. It's not as explosive as we would want it to be, but there's not really much else we can do. Alternatively, we could have maybe gotten the 2 blues, but we kind of end up in the same positions. I don't really think it changes too much. We'll just go ahead and send the claw for 7. I mean, this is still a lot of damage, right? So I definitely am not upset with this, but I definitely think we could have hit a higher threshold on that turn. Looks like we're going to have Sinew into either Strongest Survive or CNC. I guess we'll go ahead and see how my opponent interacts with this. They still have that Vigor token, which is definitely causing problems. So we know that this is at least it's going to go to 9. We can Buck Wild into another thing, but once again, Flesh Bag is the problem here. So we can't really do as much as we want to because of Flesh Bag. The main question is whether or not we want to play the CNC or if we want to play the Strongest Survive. I kind of like the concept of playing the CNC, but the Strongest Survive is more damage. So actually, I think we're going to go with the Strongest Survive play. So we'll go ahead and we'll play our Sinew. That's going to show all 6s, so we get the full +4. Very good for us. My opponent is probably just going to give up a single card here. I mean, they could take all the damage and just go to, they could end up going to 3 and then just discard a card and playing a 3-card hand, or they could just block 1, lose 1. And we'll see what they want to do. But obviously, presenting like this is very good for us. And we still have access to Sash, and we still have a Blood Rush still in deck. So I feel like we're in a good position. This Buckwild has been a problem, though. It's kind of running Arsenal for a little bit. They go double Sigil, so they just end up neutral, passing back to us. We're going to go ahead and just play the Wild Ride. I feel like we're kind of insulated against Flesh Bag here, so I'm not super concerned if they activate it. Just the way that this hand works, if they Flesh Bag and hit the Sinew, we'll display the Buck Wild, including using the gauntlets. If they hit the Agile windup, we are in a bit more trouble. We'll probably just end up having to pitch the Sinew to play the Buckwild and then arsenaling the windup, which is definitely a lot worse. So there's definitely a good chance that we get blown out if they decide to fleshbag here. So they do fleshbag. We're just really hoping they hit the Sinew, kind of a 50-50 for us to get blown out or not. Like I said, we can survive if they hit the Agile windup. Okay, luckily for us, they do not. So we end up getting pretty lucky. We get to send this for 5, but of course not before remembering to use our gauntlets. Let's get that +1. So we've gotten +2 out of the gauntlets so far this game. It might have been +3. I haven't kept super tight track. Block of the CNC, we're going to get to put a Sinew in Arsenal. This is very good, especially if we get to draw Blood Rush in the next hand. If we don't draw Blood Rush, this is much worse. The Mocking Blow is very good here. My opponent staying ahead on life this whole game is definitely very bad for us. We can block like this. It's probably fine. Unfortunately, it's just getting +5 or whatever, so we end up taking a lot of damage. This is definitely a problem. It's just very hard. I'm noticing to keep up with this deck when it's able to snowball its life total, which is it's a weird mechanic for sure. I think we're supposed to actually use the Song of Sinew here and then fix our draw. We're actually gonna do it like this, so we're gonna put the non-block Wild Ride on top. That way we just guarantee that we rip it, because we just don't want to draw 2 non-blocks in the next hand. So, and these are all very good value turns. I'm just noticing that the, as they call it, the RKO deck, it has very good numbers when it's able to stay ahead on life. So it's kind of weird. It definitely feels like it's kind of snowballing a lead. I don't know if that is a weakness that's exploitable in the deck, because like if we were more ahead this game, I could see this being worse for my opponent if these like effects just don't turn on. Like the Mocking Blow is really crazy, and if they're just lower on life and it doesn't trigger, then I feel like this card is way worse. So I don't exactly know how to gauge it. It's kind of weird. It feels like it works really well when it's ahead. So it could be a matchup dependent thing. I feel like if I got a little bit luckier in some pockets and my opponent was like down 2 life or whatever, then all of a sudden these effects don't work. So it's weird, but it does seem like a really interesting deck playing against it. All right, so they're gonna take some damage for the filler screen. It's gonna put them back up to 7. They're finally playing their Strongest Survive. We're just gonna go ahead and block out. I guess we'll block for the full 7 just in case. And then we're gonna go ahead and send Bear Fangs on our turn. We're still looking just for that way to use Sash pretty much this game. We're due to draw that final Blood Rush pretty soon. Coming in for 9 is definitely good here. Demands a couple cards from my opponent. And more specifically, they don't have Tunic up, so they don't have a Vigor token. So that definitely helps us out with some of the curve of the deck. They end up just blocking for 9. I feel very good about this because I know that we're live to draw that final Blood Rush very soon. Looks like it was a bit of a brick for them. All right, we're not quite getting there just yet. And they get Mocking Blow. I mean, it's just really solid. Pretty incredible, honestly. I think we're probably just going to block for 5 and then send Strongest Survive on our turn. I feel like that's still a perfectly fine play. So I guess we'll go ahead and do that. I'm trying to think if there's any other line that we could take. If we pop Sash, we could go Buck Wild into CNC. That also doesn't seem all that terrible. We end up taking 2 here, but we end up sending, we send 6 and 5. Our main goal here is to kind of rip my opponent and keep them on a 1-card hand. So let's think about this really quick. They're at 7 though, that's the main problem here. So we could send 5, they go to 2, and then we send CNC, they have to block with 2 cards. That still leaves them with a 2-card play, so they could still go like Mocking Blow. So it doesn't exactly get us out of that predicament. I mean, it doesn't seem bad either. So you can kind of think about this for a quick sec. We could use Fleshbag. I'm just kind of thinking mainly about keeping our life total high because I want to count how many more of the Mocking Blows that they have. So they still have some left in the deck. It looks like they played 2 blues. They just played a red. They've played 1 more red. They have resolved 1 yellow. Seems like they're probably going to have 1 in the next hand. Considering this is an instant speed effect, maybe we just end up having to cash this in here. And then we're just going to hold on to the gauntlets. This just lets us keep our life total higher so we can turn off the effects. We're trying to learn in real time about how to just, circumnavigate a little bit of this deck. But this is also not a bad hand to send the 12 here. We end up getting 2 cards. If they end up blocking for 6, that's 2 Mocking Blows. So at least we kind of read things properly about what we need to do at this spot in the game to close it out. That's including pressuring really aggressively to keep my opponent off cards, and then also just making sure that we're up on life. So they're going to play CNC. It's weird. We can go to... Well, we can go to 2 here. Is there any concern about going to 2? I think that's a valid question. I guess if there is, we're going to find out. So if we lose this game, you know, at least I guess we'll have a learning lesson. And we're going to finally rip our final Blood Rush. Kind of wish we had a little bit more life when we were doing this, but here we are. Our hope here is at least going to send Claw into an attack. All right, we get the perfect curve here, so we're going to get to go Claw into Swing Big. If there's, you know, some random, you know, ping 2 effect in the end game here and we lose to it, I guess we'll take the loss, but I feel like we kind of showcased how the deck performs after heavy hitters. I think that we got to show off Song of Sinew pretty well as well, including sculpting like the Blood Rush draw, including like sculpting the Blood Rush turn draw. And then also just using it just as a good efficient line where we, you know, paired it with like Bare Fangs and just sent like, you know, like a 2 card or like a 3 card 13. I feel like overall we kind of show what the deck is capable of now, especially with the new cards like Buck Wild and even just like Strongest Survive, just kind of consistently ripping cards from the opponent. So even if we end up losing this game, I feel like we showcased enough to put on the channel. So hopefully, regardless of the outcome, this was, you know, helpful in learning the deck a little bit. Even like our Sash turn, just using it as like a value line, not, you know, comboing it with Blood Rush. You don't always need to. Sometimes it's just as simple as using like, you know, a 3 cost go again with a 2 cost, and then being able to do that off a single blue is like sometimes good enough to use Sash for, because it's just condensed 2 resources into 1 turn. Our Swing Big in the end game here should demand their entire hand, so we'll get full tempo on the next hand is my guess, unless if they have another D-React left in the deck. We'll go ahead and I guess check their graveyard. I guess it is likely that they maybe have 1 more sync, in which case they get a 1-card hand. But I'm not entirely sure how many 1-card hands they have that are gonna take more than 1 card from us. It looks like the Mocking Blow is reliant on them being higher life total, but they are not higher life total at this point in the game. I guess they could find someone to gain life. I just don't think that's gonna happen. All right, so they block with the Overcrowded. That's actually pretty important here. So they're able to take the token, and then I'm assuming they have another D-React. Okay, they do. So if they play a 0 for 3, it actually does go to 4. It doesn't take 1 card. I guess if it's Big Bully, we have to block with 2 cards. I guess they can also just send Claw. I did forget about just, you know, using Claw as like as a viable play line here. Yep, looks like it's just gonna be Claw. I think that we're just gonna have to just block and then send 5. I mean, this is pretty weird. I'm not exactly sure how we're gonna close this game out. I guess my hope here is that they draw some kind of unfunctional 2-card hands. I mean, this lane in the game, they don't have Tunic, they don't have the Vigors anymore, so it could be likely. Okay, turns out it's really not. I guess we can both end up going low here, so we could, you know, block like this. All right, so we get a block for 7 here. I guess it's good that they can't hold the D-React. They're just going to play out their 2-card hand. Just them not being on Tunic means that they just lose a lot of their endgame explosiveness, although Swing Big is definitely pretty crazy, so we're going to go ahead and block for 8. So they definitely have better card quality in the endgame. We really need to actually reveal the unexpected backhand to a clash. That's pretty crazy. If that does happen, I think that we could steal the game. I just don't know if we have any more clash cards, actually. We go ahead and get a block from them. Go ahead and pass. Definitely am curious how this end game is going to go. I feel like we're probably just going to lose to Fatigue. We, you know, just came up like a couple damage short, unfortunately. Trying to figure out if there's any way we can reveal that unexpected backhand to a clash. I don't think that we can. Our hand is actually really good if they can only go Claw. Okay, unfortunately they do the Mocking Blow, so we have to block for 6. That's such an unfortunate thing because our end game is actually really good here. So I'll at least showcase. So if they only sent Claw, or they, you know, had only way to rip 1 card, what we get to do is we get to go Claw, discard Mighty Windup, and then play the Run Roughshod. We rip like all but 1 card left in the hand, and then we carry over 2 tokens in the next turn. And then I think we just win. Unfortunately, we don't get to do that. So I think we end up just kind of losing here. They kind of do nothing though, and I'm really not seeing a whole lot of damage left in their deck, which I think is potentially more relevant. We'll go ahead and attack with this just to rip 2 cards. If my opponent doesn't have anything else to do besides Claw though, I could see us accidentally winning this game, although I think their Claw ends up taking the rest of our deck first. It's very weird. I think it really comes down to how many attacks are even left in the deck. All right, looks like probably it's gonna D-react. Okay, take it on the chin's interesting. We once again have the roughshod line. We have to keep all 3 cards, and they just get to keep it because of the agility. It's very unfortunate. So, oh my god, they have a Nimby. We can't. Oh man, this is so sad, because I think that this was actually very sick. I thought this was like a very cool pocket to be in, but we just don't get to showcase it, unfortunately. Oh, we actually I forgot about the Nimby, so it didn't matter anyway. We block out and we lose. So definitely a good game. I think it dragged on way longer than it needed to, and we maybe could have found a way to edge out that 1 damage, but maybe this is just how the matchup goes. Hopefully that showcased enough of the deck. Even in these like end game lines with the fatigue angle, you can, you know, just discard money, wind up, send your claw, and then play like your run roughshod, and that helps you like kind of close out that end game while also making the 2 mites. So hopefully this gave you like a more broad understanding of how the deck plays now. Until next time, thank you for watching.